Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is David J. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the head of mobilization at the Center for Humane Technology. So I work really closely with Tristan Harris. I have for the past 2.5 years, taking the people who are activated initially by all of his work out in the world and now by the social dilemma and finding ways that we can help people plug into a broader movement with the power to change the way the technology is built. And we've always talked about the kind of work you all are talking about here, about youth-led work, as a really critical part of that movement. Tristan's really sorry that he couldn't make it here today. He's got a very busy schedule, but I sat down with him yesterday and we had a really good conversation about his hopes and why he's so excited about the conversations that you all are having in this conference today. And we recorded a video that's about 15 minutes. I'd love to share that video with you and then see if you have any questions or answer any questions that come up. And I can't speak for Tristan, but I can speak on behalf of our work at the Center for Humane Tech. All right, and so we should be good to start the video now.
You are about this conference. Why are you inspired by a youth-led movement for humane technology?
I'm so excited that this conference and that you are all here today working on these solutions, because we've talked internally at the Center for Humane Technology about how this problem is going to be solved by a youth-led movement, because many of you are on the front lines of dealing with these issues every single day, and you feel it oftentimes more than the adults who are less in touch with some of these issues do. So I think that I'm so excited that you are all gathering today to really think about what are the solutions that are going to solve this problem. What are the new social norms, the new ways of being with each other that we can do collectively, not just by ourselves, to solve this problem? What are the new ways that we can design technology to have our best interests at heart? What are the ways that we can know ourselves better, to be more aware of how technology is kind of hijacking these lower level features of our minds? So I am just truly honored and excited that you're all doing what you're doing today. I wish I could be there with you, but this makes me just so happy that all of you are going to be working on this today. Just a note about the film, it is astonishing that we heard from Netflix just a few days ago that 38 million households have seen this film in the first 28 days. And if only 1 out of 10 of those households has several family members, we're clearly above 40 to potentially even 50 million people around the world who've seen this film. That means that we have a movement of people who want to see this problem solved. And that's where you come in. Because you, with the work that you're doing today and the kinds of things you're going to be thinking up, can actually provide the kinds of solutions that we need so that these 50 million people who are hungry to say, how do we fix this together, you're going to be working on those solutions.
Amazing. This film has had such a tremendous impact. What does that impact look like from where you're sitting?
I wish I could share my inbox since the film released, because I get messages, hundreds of messages every day from around the world, from Indonesia, from Argentina, from Chile, from Lebanon, from places everywhere, because this is a global issue. And so as much as, many of you probably are in the United States, are working on these issues, just realize there's a global audience of people who want to see the solutions that you're coming up with. And a thing I could have never anticipated is, with the film launching in 190 countries and in 30 languages, that this would have just a bigger global impact than I could have ever imagined. It's almost, it's definitely gotten bigger than the inconvenient truth was for climate change. But this is the climate change of culture. And I just wish that for those people who feel alone, like they see this problem and I feel hopeless and I'm all alone, that you're not alone. There are literally 50 million people who feel just like you and want to see this problem solved. And the things that you're going to be working on are part of that solution.
This film and your work is taking on some of the most entrenched, powerful corporations and economic forces in our world right now. It's a really scary, really daunting task. What makes you think that we can be successful?
Many people, when they realize that, it's all of us against a handful of corporations that are worth trillions of dollars with entrenched economic interests, in yesterday's business model, and continuing to go down the path that we're on. How could we possibly be hopeful with that? Well, the way I think about it is, having worked on this for about 8 years is, over the last 8 years, we have met so many people who are inside of the companies who say, oh my gosh, I'm starting to really see that this unchecked virality movement, this way of making content go viral, is really dangerous, but I don't know what to do about it. And they're just one neuron waking up inside of a big Borg like Facebook. And then you get a few more neurons kind of waking up inside of a big Borg like Facebook or Google or YouTube. And imagine a body that is sort of punching itself and it doesn't know that it's punching itself. And you get a few neurons that wake up. Well, a few neurons isn't enough to stop the body from punching itself. But if the entire body can become aware that it's actually hurting itself, that this business model about harvesting human attention is sort of like cannibalism. You're eating your own life support systems because you're extracting your own capacity to think and choose freely as a fully capacious human being. And I think what's inspiring to me is for the first time that I really, in the last 8 years, I feel hopeful because we now have the entire body, the whole human politique of 50 million people waking up and seeing we can't continue to do what we're doing. And as Justin says in the film, so long as a whale is worth more dead than alive, and corporations profit from dead whales, and a tree is worth more as lumber than as a tree, now we're the whale, we're the tree that's worth more when we're producing dead slabs of human attention or predictable behavior than if we're free and conscious and choosing for ourselves. And I think that this film is going to really this film has really woken up the public to that truth. And you're going to be the ones who help us figure out how we navigate from here.
Amazing. At the moment when people are going to watch this video, they are about to step in to take action and commit to understand how they can be a part of solving this problem. What advice do you have for them?
What are the things that I think people need to know as you start to approach solutions for this? One thing is to really reckon with the kind of meat suit that we're all trapped inside of, right? So here's one example. How do we reckon with the fact that when something faster, juicier, more efficient, less costly, and more sweet shows up on life's menu, we always switch to it, right? Like imagine a world with taxi cabs that are expensive and you have to call someone versus a world where I hit one button on my phone and Uber shows up and it's always cheaper. When that faster, cheaper, sweeter option shows up, that's what we switch to. So now take our relationship with technology, and we all feel like we're helplessly, addicted to these things. Well, what we have to realize is if you're just with yourself and you unplug, there you are in your room, and there's your guitar, there's your book, there's the TV. These are the options on life's menu. And then suddenly this appears. This is always going to feel like a sweeter, tastier, faster delivery option of dopamine than the rest of the things in our physical world. Unless we're conscious that that's always going to be the case. It's sort of like if you live in a kitchen with cookies everywhere. And if you're used to cookies everywhere, how is it going to feel that first day when you unplug and you remove all sugar? It's going to be really hard. So how do we help people have the consciousness and the kind of strengthening those muscles to realize that even when there I am and there's nothing going on, that's okay? That could actually feel sweeter to be with ourselves and to reconnect with nature than it is to necessarily jump right back into one of these engaging systems. So that's one prompt for you. Another prompt I might throw for your way is on social norms. What are ways that we can unplug or re-relate to technology together? Because one of the things people are finding after the social dilemma is they say, oh my God, I just saw that movie and I'm going to delete my Instagram account. But then all their friends are still on Instagram and their friends are talking about who's dating who and who's going to whose house later, all on Instagram. So if you unplug, you're going to miss out on those social opportunities. So that's the kind of diabolical nature, is that the platforms prey on social exclusion, that will be excluded if we don't participate. So one of the prompts for all of you is, what is a way that we can enable a group migration? So just like the birds, all go, north or south for different seasons, how can we take a group of people and enable them to do some commitment. Maybe it's disconnect for 5 days. Maybe it's to read books for 5 days instead of looking at social media and news. If we take that action, but we do it accountably and together, what could that look like, and how could we help instrument that process? So an example might be something like, moving 5 friends off of Instagram and into an iMessage text thread. And at the beginning of the text thread, everyone posts a screenshot of how much time they spent on their social media apps. And then they agree for the next 5 days to do a little journaling and do other things instead. And at the end of the 5 days, everyone pastes another screenshot together of their social media screen time on their iPhone. So those are some good prompts for how we can take these actions together. One last idea is something I call pattern interrupts. And a pattern interrupt is when you're about to go do something like shake someone's hand and they do something really different. And it interrupts your brain's kind of automatic habit. And you ask, okay, what do I really want to do in this situation? Because it's surprising. When we used to recommend to people to turn their phones grayscale, like my phone is grayscale right now, and I can make it go color again if you saw that. Anyway, when you go grayscale, the power of that is that you can, when you look at your phone, it's not that the gray just removes those juicy colors and makes it less addictive. It's also that it reminds you, it's a reminder, oh, right, I set my phone to grayscale because I want to use it more consciously. And when people do things like set their phone grayscale or turn off or remove all the social media apps or turn off all notifications, or if they remove most of the apps from their home screen and just have 3 or 4 tools that they use all the time, like notes or calendar or whatever it is for you, when you make that kind of big change, that's like a pattern interrupt, because from that moment onward, you're going to look at your phone, and it's going to feel like you walk into your room after you've just rearranged all the furniture. So for those first few days, you have an opportunity to feel like your relationship to technology is fresh. So how do we create those pattern interrupts and then have people set a new intention when they do it? So if there's some way that we can kind of rearrange the room of how our phone works, whether it's our notifications or messages or what we're deleting, and do that together and really remember every time we look at our phone, we're living in a new social contract, a new paradigm. Another example of that would be ways that we can create dinner games where maybe you say to a group of your family at dinner, the first person who picks up their phone in the middle of dinner has to do the dishes. And so you can set a kind of a group commitment of how we want to do this together. And maybe the last thing that I'd say is, how do we be forgiving with ourselves when we fall off the horse? Because we are all human, we're all fallible. And, I have studied these issues for many years of my life, and I am still addicted to technology in ways that everyone else is. It's almost also like an extension of ourselves. So if we end up using technology again, how do we not be so hard on ourselves? Because when you feel bad about yourself, what does that make you do? Go to your addictive thing more or less, right? It's like if you have a diet and you say, I'm not going to eat any sugar, and then one day you just blow past your sugar budget and you go way past and you feel bad about yourself. Do you in that moment say, oh, I definitely don't want to eat more sugar? Or do you say, oh, well, now all bets are off. I feel bad. The thing that would make this pain go away and this guilt go away would be to eat even more sugar, right? And so I think we have to be really kind to ourselves and compassionate. And I think I'd encourage all of you to think about, how do we build more compassionate social contracts so we don't shame each other or ourselves when we don't necessarily show up the way we want to.
Great. Any last thoughts for the folks in this emerging movement before we let them go?
Yeah, maybe the last thing I'd share is, I want this movement of people, this movement for humane technology, and all of you. I think the thing we need now is for the movement to see itself. Because right now people think I'm alone and I'm powerless and it's just me and I'm the only one who feels this way. And that's not the case at all. And what we really need is for the movement to see itself, and for people to be sharing their stories about how these issues that are in the social dilemma and all of the concerns that you're bringing up around technology to be made visible for other people. And one thing we're going to be working on is story banking, ways that you can share your story with us so we can actually have all of the stories of kids who've been affected by social media in different ways. And adults and mental health professionals and doctors and hospital leaders and people who are seeing these harms in the front lines. The more that we share our stories with each other and we can see that we're not alone, it's okay, and there's a way out. And that was taught to me by a mentor of mine, that people often think when they're experiencing some kind of suffering that they're the only one, that it's not okay, and there's no way out. And the key thing is for the movement of people and all of our stories to go in one central place. And so we'd love for you to please keep in touch with the work that we're doing at the Center for Humane Technology and share your stories with us. That'll be coming soon. And just really honored and grateful that you're doing the work that you're doing today. I sincerely hope that you guys come up with some great solutions, because we need you to.
So first, my name is Emma Lemke, and we just want to thank David, and we want to thank Tristan for all of your work in putting that video together and assisting in giving us, the youth of the world, some advice on how to remedy this issue at hand and how to really combat the destructive natures of social media while also finding the good in it. So we just really wanted to start off, and I personally, along with a lot of other attendees, are just really curious about how you, David, got into the digital wellness field. What's your experience with the Center for Humane Technology, and how do you see it growing in the future?
Ooh, great question. So I got started in this work. I was 18. I was an undergrad. And so I identify as asexual, for those of you who know what this pin means. And I was this kid who was all alone, and I never talked to another asexual person. And some of my first experiences on the internet were finding places where I could talk to other people who shared my experience, and finding places where this thing that I felt ashamed about, I could tell a story about. And that meant that I could connect with people, we could build relationships, we could build trust. And out of that, we could really start to change things. And I helped to create one of the first communities for people who identify as asexual. And got to see how the internet could be, on the one hand, this really powerful tool for connection and relationship when combined with offline connection, and also could see how the internet was a really destructive tool. A lot of the folks in our community were young people. A lot of the folks in our community were, and still are, struggling with the same issues that you all are talking about every day. And so I came to the Center of Humane Technology because I saw this immense need for the way that technology shows up in our lives to change, to give us more connection and less distraction, to be a tool to help us understand ourselves better rather than a tool to try to shape who we are on behalf of companies. And I came also with this history of movement building, and specifically of movement building that was often centered and led by young people. And so I think I come here to the work that you all are doing, recognizing that there's this incredible potential, especially now after the social dilemma in the way that Tristan talked about, to create a movement with the power to change things. And it's not like it's your responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility, but young people have a really critical role to play in that movement as leaders. And so I'm here in part to support you all, and to frankly meet some of the leaders who are going to be critical in taking this to us to the place we need to be.
Thank you so much, David. And I have another question for you. My name is Eliza. I am a senior in high school from right outside of Boston, and I am doing a lot of work in trying to reorient our world to be human, not digital focused. And so, David, my question is, because this is an up and coming field and issue that people are now becoming aware of, when you're the person who needs to take that first step and you don't yet have a community, how do you gain that courage to take that step and to do, as Tristan said, to pattern interrupt and change your relationship with technology when you don't yet have a network of support?
I think that's a really great question. And that's part of why conferences like this are so powerful, is that people need, in order to stay in a movement, and in order to, I think, transform ourselves, we often need those supportive relationships. And you can start by finding them in communities like this, at this conference. You can start by finding them in the weekly conversations that we're hosting in the Center for Humane Technology. I'm going to be rolling out, we're going to be rolling out soon a system for folks who want to create discussion groups, like groups locally within their schools, where so that people can have a place to come and talk to all the other people who are creating groups in their school. So I think the first thing to do is to create a place where you yourself can find support. And then as you find that support, become the place that other people connect to. Because I guarantee you that there are other people in your life who are struggling with the same thing, who want to have this conversation. And if you can create the container for them, if you can create the space for them, they'll show up and they'll be grateful for it. And it takes a lot to create that container, like get support, get your own network of support that you need before you do that. But know that when you do that, it's going to be transformative. It's going to be powerful, not just for you, but for the people around you.
Hi, David. So I guess just to ask like one final question. My name is Ella. I'm a junior at the University of Southern California. I'm studying journalism and passionate about all things mental health, digital tech, life, work, balance. And I've really taken a deep dive into this space. And I think this conversation, all the conversations we've had today are so important, and we are so grateful that you're here with us. And so, I think we've talked about how we, the youth, I mean, I'm 20, but so many people on this call are 15, 16, but more generally, we are the leaders, and like how integral we are to this movement, even though it may not feel like it. And this is similar to Eliza's question, but I think it can be hard to normalize digital wellness among our peers in a workplace where we're the newbie, a freshman, an entry-level position. Like why would anyone listen to me? I know before I started my work in this space, I suffered from imposter syndrome, and I was like, well, I don't know it all. I'm not a psychology major. Why would I even tell people like what they're supposed to do when I don't know? But I think people also don't realize how much like the one conversation with the person next to you at lecture, or the one Instagram post, like if that is changing one person, that has a huge effect. So I guess just, it's not a specific question, but what would you say? And I guess also like, why is it so important that we continue this work even when the going gets tough, like it is right now during a global pandemic?
Yeah. So I want to answer your question by saying something that I've learned in my life kind of studying movements, which is that there's this sense that movements come from like big marches, and they come from these places where people are saying big strategies, and they come from these like bold statements and moral imperatives about how the world changes. But when you look at most movements historically, from feminism to civil rights to queer rights to climate change, movements tend to grow out of support spaces. They grow out of places where people come together to share stories first and build trust first. And then out of those spaces, which usually you can't see from the outside, you get the organizers and you get the relationships that have the power to really change things. So one of the things I want to push back on what you just said is like, who am I to tell people what to do? And I would say, don't tell people what to do. Like the most powerful thing you can do is share stories and create a place where other people can share their stories and practice. Like everyone has a complicated relationship with technology right now, and most people don't have a place to talk about it. And if you can be bold enough to stand up and tell a story that vulnerably models what it's like to talk about a complicated relationship with technology, and then invite other people to have the story with you, to tell that story with you. And they're probably not going to do it in public. They're probably going to like walk up to you afterward and be like, what you said really resonates with me. And like, do you want to have coffee? But like those people are the first handful of people who can join you in building a community and building a space and building a movement in the place that you're in. So I would say, don't feel like you're too new to share a story and invite people into sharing stories.
Thank you so much for that comment, David. I really agree. I think that your juxtaposition between having a support container and then telling people what to do is so powerful and so impactful for all of these future like leaders. And we actually have a question from the audience. It comes from David, and he says, what is the role for kids in creating this movement? What can we do to start it today? How can we efficiently work together to spark this movement in alignment instead of working separately?
So so many answers to that question. I mean, we've talked a lot already. You heard Tristan talking about the important role that you all have to play as leaders in this movement. And I think, and we've talked a little bit about what that means. It means, first of all, just showing up telling stories, creating places where other people can tell stories. I think that one thing I really love, and I'm going to look at the text of this question because there was a word, how do we work to spark this movement in alignment instead of working separately? So one thing, there's a person who writes about how social movements form. His name's Marshall Gans. And he says that when you tell stories, you tell a story of self, and then a story of us, and then a story of now. We start by sharing our stories, and then we say the thing that our stories overlap, the values that we share. And if as you're sharing stories and creating supportive spaces, you're continually coming back to that, what's this thing that we have in common? Then that can help to keep people in alignment. And one other thing you can do to keep people in alignment is to really think intersectionally about this movement. Don't just say, hey, we're the digital wellness movement. We're here to talk about digital wellness and healthy relationship with technology, and anyone who shows up, who wants to have that conversation, can show up with us. Because questions of digital wellness, questions of harassment, are really active in, for example, the climate movement, where you have climate deniers that actively attack people. They're really active and important in public health circles while people are responding to the pandemic. They're really important in racial justice struggles, where you see things like algorithmic bias intersecting with people's experiences online. So don't just have a conversation for the people who show up to you, show up to other people's conversation. Show up to conversations that intersect, like join them, support them in their work, and ask questions about how are all the things that we talk about in social media impacting people who are fighting these other movements? Because we need a really intersectional movement in order to really make change happen. And the best way to do that is to show up supportive first and then invite people in second.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for that answer. And thank you so much for just telling us to tell our own stories and then to galvanize other people in order to create this lovely narrative where everyone can tell their stories and feel supported like you did. We just want to thank everyone for coming. We want to thank you, David and Tristan, for all of your kind words and your support. And now we are going to move into talking about our call to action pitches from our earlier 90-90 pitch group sessions.
Yes, so thank you for all of that awesome discussion, David and Emma, for facilitating the questions, and Eliza and Ella. I think that it would be awesome to move into, so we're, as Emma just said, we're going to move into our commitment to action pitches. And so we'll have representatives from each of the groups. One of them can't be with us, so I'll be reading out the ethical tech group's commitment to action, but we'll have them just really briefly go over what each group has committed to do for the next 90 days. So we can start. Emma, why don't you go ahead?
Absolutely. So just to reiterate, I'm Emma Lemke. I am a high school senior from Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of the Log Off movement. So our pitch was kind of focused around two things. We were inspired by Tristan Harris's comments at the Wisdom 2.0 Q&A, and we were inspired by the Jubilee Spectrum videos. And basically with the comment from Tristan Harris, he just mentioned the power of words. He just said, it takes 7 people to tell 7 other people, and then you can start a movement. And we were really taken aback by that comment, and we decided that we wanted our call to action to be anchored in conversation. So our title of our pitch is just called the Spectrum Talks. So for our Log Off group and for our group in general, what we are doing is we promise to go forward. We're using the Log Off website and platform in order to create Spectrum Talks, where people can have dinner conversations and conversations with friends via Zoom, or at the dinner table if they're family during COVID, where they can have a structured conversation with questions where you will have to find where you lie on the spectrum. If you agree or disagree with statements such as, The Social Dilemma was a very impactful movie for me. And then you have to tell your own story and listen to others and reflect off of that. And what we're going to do is we're going to create 3 different spectrum guides, and then from there create a series of spectrum guides and spectrum conversations for people to use within the Log Off community and around the globe.
Awesome. Sounds like a great commitment. So next we can have Ella.
So again, I'm Ella. I'm a junior at the University of Southern California. Thank you again, David. Your answers to our question were amazing, even though my question was a mouthful. But our group, we did not, but that's amazing, Emma. Ours was more our commitment to action for the next 90 days, more like personal and small habits that we can change. And we made a pact to do that. And hopefully we stay in touch. One thing that we talked about was journaling our social media usage and being, in order to be like intentional about posting, viewing, and really how being on social media is making us feel. And then obviously, if we just set 15 minutes aside to do that once a week, and then be like, okay, I looked on Instagram right when I woke up and it really made me not feel great. So maybe I'm not going to do that now or whatever. We also talked about, I think a lot of youth, teens, they charge their phones right next to their head or even in their bed. And for Thrive Global, which also gonna quickly plug the blog contest. Please check it out. They're amazing. I contribute writing to them, but they are fully committed to ending this mental health crisis, burnout epidemic. LookUp is partnered with them. So check it out. You can go to lookup.live/startup. I'm pretty sure if I mess that up, I'll put it in the chat after. But one of Thrive's biggest things is like making the bedroom and your sleep space tech-free and totally just like this is sleeping time. But I talked about with my group, like my phone is my alarm. And so one thing we talked about trying to do is either getting an alarm clock or trying to charge our phone, if not in another room, like away from the bed. So like on the floor in a corner. Sounds like something so small, but really could make a difference and help you get out of bed to turn your alarm off. Another thing we talked about, which I think was probably one of our best commitments to action, is a guide for parents. I think it's easy for parents to be like, well, I just want my kids to be off it. But that's not really the way the world works, right? I know I say that, I'm 20 years old and I say I'm gonna have a family and my kids just aren't gonna have any of it. Actually, no, they're gonna have many more devices and apps that don't exist yet, which is scary, but instead of being scared of it, why can't we just learn how to live with it? And so this brilliant member of my group, Jack, was talking about a comprehensive guide he made for parents at his high school or former high school to help them understand why their kids are using these platforms and to help be like a positive resource instead of just being like, you can't be on them, because that's not as realistic or feasible as it used to be. So that's what we talked about. We had a great conversation. And I'm excited to see what comes of it.
Great. So next up, we have Eliza with her commitment.
Thank you so much, Tori and Emma and Ella. Your initiatives seem amazing, and mine is sort of in the middle of that, with it's more of a personal. We don't have an amazing website like Emma has, but really focusing on the social aspect. And so it's called Unplug to Reconnect, and it's aimed to inspire and empower anyone to turn off their devices in order to connect with the real, not digital world. And the real premise behind this is it should be purposeful. And one of the members of my group brought up this word, which I think I've been using intentional, but I really like purposeful, that you are having a purpose when you're turning off your screens and you're going into another activity. And so our commitment to action is that everyone who participated in the group, and I encourage the audience to do so as well, to plan an activity either with your friends or with your family that will be screen free. And you can come up with fun things to do. We brainstorm some ideas, lots of outdoor activities, go for a hike, go for skiing, depending on your climate, read books, do art, play a game of soccer, really whatever you want to do without your screens. And then another element of this is that we are building in time for literal screen breaks. So time when you go and check your phone if you need to be in contact with your parents, or if you have something time sensitive you need to do, because we acknowledge that people are depending on us to be on our phones and to be connected with the broader world. So as much as we want to remove ourselves, sometimes it is crucial to check your devices. And so to build in times so that people can be really fully present in the moments without their screens.
Thank you so much, Eliza. As I said before, one of our groups is in a time zone that it is a little bit restricted, so I am going to read the Ethical Tech Group's commitment to action. So the Ethical Tech Action Group has committed to come up with 49 techniques and consolidate on the building tech platform under a public domain license for engineers and developers to refer to while building their tech. So it seems like they also had a really awesome conversation in their group, and that they came up with a really awesome commitment for the next 90 days. I
think Maria's here.
Okay, so Marie, if you would like to share your pitch, that'd be really awesome.
Is she able to speak? We can come back to Marie when we get her, but thanks guys, sorry about that.
So those have been our action pitches. We might end up coming back to Marie if we can get technical difficulties sorted out. But it seems like all of these groups have come up with really awesome ways to keep this whole movement alive for the next 90 days and hopefully more in the future. So I'm really excited by all the awesome conversations and commitments that you all have made.
Fantastic, Tori. So while we're waiting for Marie, we'll give a shout out. Again, I am Susan Reynolds, the co-founder of LookUp, and actually my mother, Ann Reynolds, is my other co-founder. And I just want to tell you that we are in Lake Tahoe together. We've had 3, 4, 5 computers going all day long, an entire family, 3 generations watching these panels. And we are blown away by you, by our youth, by Gen Z. So what I want to do right now is just take a mindful moment. And for everybody watching here, everybody participating, all our amazing speakers, all our amazing sponsors, all our amazing exhibitors, all the people that have put this together, just to take a deep breath and just feel your feet on the ground. And just take a moment to reflect on one takeaway. And the beautiful thing about this virtual conference, as much as I would have loved for us all have been together in the same place, is we have this conference now for 6 months on this Whova platform, on the website, on the app. If you hold your phone and you have Whova open, you have our digital well-being Center for Humane Technology, solving all the social dilemma community together. And so we're not ending right now. And I love what David said about storytelling, because really the instant that kicked LookUp into action for me to really say, okay, now I know what I want to do, is Tristan was speaking at a Common Sense Media Conference, May 29th, 2019, right? The world was very different then. And you heard some talks today about the connection between climate change and this internal climate change of the brain and of the mind and of culture. And Tristan was talking about global climate change. And I asked him where the Gretas were. And so he looked at me and said, the Gretas? I said, yeah, we need Greta Thunberg. And Tristan looked me in the eye and said, no, we need 1,000 Greta Thunbergs. Well, let me tell you, after today, we are well on our way. We had over 60 youth speakers, as I said earlier today, from 35 countries. And those were just our panelists and our moderators and our speakers, all of you that were commenting on, asking questions and getting engaged. So really, really, really incredible. So some thank yous. Huge thank yous to Jeff Orlowski and Tristan Harris and David J. for being really those pinnacle keynotes and inspiring mobilizers and believing in you, believing in this youth movement. And all of our adult allies, our adult ally panel, all of the digital wellness companies and professionals who are in our exhibitors booths, our impact sponsors. I mean, I think if you look, what I love about our impact sponsors is it's this spectrum. It holds the world from watching The Social Dilemma to having the Center for Humane Technology and the Digital Wellness Collective right here in this movement with Ariana Huffington and Thrive Global and Thought Leadership and their new app, Thrive Zip, to BlackRock, and not only BlackRock, but BlackRock's Women's Initiative Network. So I just think it's such an amazing representative of this world that is coming together to hold you up, Gen Z. And then our behind the scenes amazing LookUp powerhouse. So none of this could have happened without Julie O'Brien, LookUp's executive director, who has really been my right hand through all of this. And I just can't even, I wish we were on the same coast right now. She's in Boston with the rest of the team, and I'm here in California. Lexi Kingshaw as our engagement manager, Carolyn Lovell, who's done all sorts of engagement and social media, Rebecca Denny, and then Sam Lodgson, tech guru. We could not have done this without him at all. So just a huge shout out to my team who really took this pretty daunting task. Tori and Emma and Eliza will tell you, we really came up with this idea about 7 weeks ago and thought, sure, we can pull this off. We can pull together 12 panels and keynote speakers and, in a virtual world. And I think, we've done an amazing job. You've done an amazing job. But the best part of this, and this is what is so important, and for those of you watching to take away, this community stays live. This group, if you have it on your app or your computer, we are live as a community for the next 6 months, which means you can use the meetup groups, you can do the chats, you can connect with people. All of these networking aspects are there for us. So this is, you can even tell a friend, hey, you missed the summit today, but you know what? You can sign up on Eventbrite and get right back in. Everything has been recorded. It will all be there. So that is really, really exciting. And as we close, I said to just think about that takeaway, and the beauty of the recording and the permanence of this is just in 15 minutes of Tristan speaking or half an hour of Jeff's opening talks. Fractals. We could think about fractals and the importance of fractals and what that means, and the positive use of fractals versus the negative use of fractals. I mean, we could have a whole discussion group about that one phrase. What about social movements as a marathon versus a sprint, right? I mean, so there's so many nuggets in here that we can all come back to and discuss some more. And you can't condense a book into a tweet. Right? I mean, does that say so much about my generation without telling you my age, but my generation versus your generation, right? And so all of these amazing, and every single panel had a nugget, had several nuggets. We had people connecting, the teen advocacy, finding out, connecting with each other to how to bring a movement to your own high school. Our BlackRock Women's Group, really creating this camaraderie around issues that are very specific to females. We have a lot, now we've got all these tech ethicists and designers who are gonna answer that call that the Social Dilemma is asking for. And I will close just in giving you two pieces from LookUp. Is we are here, LookUp is here to create opportunities. And so we have two pretty amazing opportunities right now. One is called the LookUp Startup Competitions, lookup.live startup/startup. And we're offering up to $2,500 seed grants to university teams that come up with solutions to these dilemmas, and that they are on our website. And the other thing that's really important to say is that if you are an international student, all you need to do is have one US student on your team to apply, and that will bring you into the fold. And the only reason is it's very complicated to give grant money across boundaries. We are tied to the US right now. And as Ella said, Ariana Huffington is cheerleading you all the way along with her Thrive Global organization. And very quickly, we will be putting out a thought leadership contest to write about your thoughts and advocate, because we feel that writers and podcasters are advocates and activists, just like people in, sort of in the field with a movement. So we have these opportunities. Continue to follow us at lookup.live, continue to stay on the Whova platform, and stay with us and stay with it. And if you get discouraged, just go back and listen to Jeff and Tristan and David J. and all these other amazing advocates that we've been with us today. And thank you.